And sometimes you got to do a time study. How do I spend my day? Who's on my team? Who can I rely on? And if my answer to that is not a lot of people, then it's time to clean house and find some good leaders so you can really scale your business, because that will definitely hold you back.
Friends, I'm excited today to have a dear friend and a guest on the show today. Now, I've known this individual for some years now, and I've watched her journey. I've watched her impact hundreds of lives. I've seen her on stage. I've talked with her on private conversations. Let me tell you, you're in for a treat today from my guest, Miss Julie Keys. How are you, my friend?
Mm. Oh, thank you, Justin. I'm doing very well, and it's wonderful to be here.
I am so glad to have you on the
Yeah.
show. I've not had many guests, and more importantly, I've not had many female guests that I know, and
Mm.
I've watched their journey. So I'm excited to unpack your wisdom for our audience today. So thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
So let's start off. I know you, you know me, but let's start off for the audience. Who is Julie Keys?
I mean, from a professional standpoint, I guess I would describe myself as a trailblazing entrepreneur. I was raised with entrepreneurs on both sides of my family, going back 3 generations on both sides. And I grew up knowing I knew I would own a business. I didn't know what it would be. And I've owned several businesses over the years. And now, over the last 12 years, I'm consulting for business owners, just trying to help them shorten their learning curve, meet the right people at the right time. Some of the things that I didn't have when I went through my own exit were the right advisors and understanding the process. It could have been better.
I do know. And that's, unfortunately, that's all too familiar for any business owner who's been in that seat for any length of time, right?
Hmm.
We don't know what we don't know until we learn from somebody like yourself who's been in the trenches, who's paid the bills, who knows what it's like to sit in that CEO seat and then to go through an exit. So I guess I want to start there, Julie. What was this exit? What was this first business that you worked through and exited?
Yeah, we owned two title insurance companies, a law firm that was primarily real estate related. And my husband was in an accident and couldn't practice law anymore. And I just didn't want to be in the business anymore. And we had a really good, solid list of clients that we'd worked with for a long time. And I didn't have a good accountant. I didn't know that. I mean, your tax preparer is not someone that you should go through an exit with. I didn't even know there was a process. I mean, this is a while ago. I didn't have good legal counsel. Um, yeah, so the list kind of goes on and on. I didn't have anybody to quarterback. And my deal maker was just about making the transaction happen. It wasn't really about making sure that I had the best outcome. So I didn't know that then. But then after I got out of that business and I knew I didn't want to go back to it and start my own thing, we ended up getting divorced too, unfortunately. So that's kind of what pushed the exit. I just wanted to help other business owners. And so I took a 2 year sabbatical, went through a discernment process, did a lot of praying, coaching, talking to my, people that I knew best. And they all agreed with me that I needed to become an advisor. And so I did that, went through coaching, training, business coaching, and then heard about EPI about 5 years later and got certified as an exit planner. So here I am today.
Wow, what a journey. And you experienced one of the D's then that we often talk about in the Exit Planning Institute. So the transition or the transaction of moving from the business was part of a divorce. Did I hear that correct?
Hmm. Yep.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
whenever you've been consulting business owners how long have you been a business advisor?
Since 2011.
Okay.
So they're just about 13 years. And a SEPA, just about 9 years, eight
Well,
years.
I
Yeah.
know from our speaking, your knowledge is extremely deep. It's unbelievable the knowledge that you have and that you're willing to share and how you coach your clients. But you to experience one of those D's, as we often talk about, death, disagreement, divorce, disability, and I forget the fifth one off my top of my head.
Hmm.
But these five
Hmm.
D's that business owners face to go through that, and now to come on the other side of it and step back into this consulting role, what an impact that you've had, an opportunity you've had to influence hundreds, I'm sure, by this point, of business owners over this journey of 11 years. So, through this 11-year period, what do you see are the common traits or habits of successful business owners? Let's start with the successful ones first.
Hmm. Yeah. And we'll circle back on the 5Ds because I have a couple of short stories that really highlight the fact that it helped that I went through them
Sure,
myself.
let's stay there now. Let's go there
Yeah,
now.
sure. So one that was a disability, her husband, this woman was referred to me by one of her relatives who was an advisor. Her husband had a stroke and he had been going through rehabilitation for a couple of years, and the prognosis was that he would be fully recovered and go back to work. He was only 59, but it never happened. And so she came to me and said, I need to sell the business. I need to get it ready and I need to get myself ready. And I hear that you're the one. What happened was we ended up having to adjust the members of her team. Like I said before, I recognized when we needed a new CPA. I recognized when we needed a new attorney. We also didn't have a financial advisor who'd ever been through a business succession. So she really needed me to help quarterback all of that. And at the end of the day, when it ended up happening, and there were so many things in between that we don't have time for, but she ended up getting numerous letters of intent, and her deal maker that I brought in did an amazing job. Between he and I, we made it happen. And she got 3 written offers that she had a really hard time choosing from. And she ended up taking the cash offer, and it was from a publicly traded company. And so she did very well with her exit. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And another one was disability related from a heart attack that his doctor just said, you have to sell your business. The stress is too much for you. So we worked together for a while, and he thought that it was going to get done real early. So he called me and he said, yeah, I saw you at a seminar a couple of years ago. And he gave me his name and he goes, do you remember me? And I said, well, sorry, but let's get together. Right. So we did. And he said, well, I really want to sell this. Can I get it done by the end of the year? And it was October. And and I said, well, I think we're going to need a little more time for that, for the whole process, just because there's so much to it. And we want to make sure you have the best outcome. So a year and a half later, he sold the business. He's living at his lake home, having a great life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew this, but my third business I sold was part of a disagreement. I had
Oh,
become the
yes.
CEO of the company, and long
Mm-hmm.
story short, there was a disagreement. Ended up selling it through the court system. And so, and
Mm,
I've seen the death side. I've never dealt with a disability. I've dealt with a divorce. Unfortunately, that to me is the hard one.
yeah.
Is the divorce side. But yeah, we never know as business owners. You and I, even to this day, we never know. We with the business owners we can coach, or we have the opportunity and privilege to coach, or even ourselves, what the future holds. And so, being prepared is key for us as business owners. It's also key for us as coaches. So, with that in mind, if we look at the business owners that you've had the honor and privilege to serve, what are some of their traits that are just positive? If you're like, man, Justin, whenever I see these traits in a business owner, I know they're going to rock it out. I know these people are going places.
Oh man, yeah, for sure. I think that it starts with belief,
Mm.
the belief that they can achieve the goals that they're setting out to achieve, that they deserve to. Uh, Female owners sometimes have a worthiness issue. That's probably another show. So belief and planning, execution, having the right team. I think having the right network. So obviously your advisors are everything. I learned that, having the right advisors, but having the right network too, so that your network, I always say your network is your net worth. And so if you have a good network, they will help you contribute to grow and grow your enterprise. So those, for me, those are the things that stand out the most. When I see that an owner is not resistant to having outside perspective and outside advisors that know what they're doing, who are competent, then that owner is going to go somewhere.
Absolutely. So in your mind's eye, can you picture maybe a past client, not by name, obviously, but can you picture a past client that you can say, Justin, let me tell you about this individual who kind of fit that picture, and here's where they were, and here's where we ended. Do you have a story like that you can share with me?
All right, so we'll talk about a well-oiled one that
Okay.
actually had those components in place. And I was speaking at a family business center in the Twin Cities, and he and his wife, who owned the business and started the business, were in the audience. And they pulled me aside at the end and they said, we're thinking about selling our business and we really need some help thinking this through and working with somebody. We've been implementing the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, but we don't know anything about exit planning. We've never sold a business. Can you help us? I said, sure. And so as we were working together, I realized how much they had actually spent on making changes, improving the business, implementing strategy and accountability with their leaders, and making sure they had the right people in the right seats. They had 2 of their children in the business, neither of whom were interested in running the business, but they wanted to stay in the business. So we wanted to make sure, since it was going to be an external sale, that they would be part of the mix. And then one day the phone rang, and it was a publicly traded company from another country, Canada.
Wow.
And they were interested in my client's business. Now, let's face it, you and I both know our clients get phone calls like that, and they're not always legitimate, right?
Yeah.
But this one happened to be. And thankfully, I'd already had this conversation with them, so they knew that they weren't supposed to say anything really, and deferred to their attorney, right? Because we didn't need a deal maker if we were going to go this route. I always say one deal is no deal, but in this case, it was worth pursuing because they really were hot after my client. And it was because they had put all these things in place, right? Implemented a good strategy, stuck to their guns, cash flowed the business well, right people, right seats, key people are retained. The list goes on. And they too ended up with a cash sale.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It was amazing. I was so happy for them.
I bet. But as a coach, I know not all stories are success stories, or at least maybe not in the beginning. So,
No.
we talk about the good side of whenever we look at business owners, we can see the things that are just jiving the business engine, just, hitting on all 8 cylinders, as we'd say here in the South. But when we deal with business owners, sometimes they come to us and they're scrambling. Maybe they feel the glass ceiling, or they're drowning with whatever the pressure is.
Right.
What are the common traits that you often see from those business owners that find themselves in that type of position, a position where they feel like they're drowning?
I think they have a hard time delegating when they get to that point. Like maybe they haven't had the right people to delegate to, or maybe they just have a really hard time letting go. And so then they end up wearing way too many hats and having too much on their plate, and they're overwhelmed and they can't get it all done. And so then if their head is always down because they're always working, then they never look up, right? To look at the future, to see what might be, who could we team up with, what kind of advisors do I need, that kind of thing. And so having someone come in to quarterback that process and coach them on, what they really might need to look strategically at the vision for the future, that's what they really need. But they don't always know that that's what they need. And sometimes owners just get stubborn and they don't want to take advice. They want to DIY. So, but to their detriment, because most of the time, at least in my experience, they leave a lot on the table when they try to do that.
Absolutely. So, we've got thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of business owners listen to us on the episode here. And
Congratulations.
Hey, friends, yeah, thanks. So friends, wherever you're listening to us, by the way, go ahead and drop a review, leave us a comment, and that'll help us out on the show. But there may be an individual like that. There may be an individual, Julie, who doesn't realize that they're looking down, or maybe they don't realize that they're hit a glass ceiling. Maybe they're the firefighter putting out so many fires, spinning the plates like we've seen the circus act.
Mm-hmm.
What question or questions, whenever you're faced with that type of an individual, that type of a business owner, what question or questions do you ask that individual to move them from, hey, I'm looking down, to, look, there's a bigger horizon, there's a bigger opportunity in front of you. Let's look up, as you put it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that some of the main questions are just to ask them what they really love about being an owner of a business. And sometimes they found themselves in a role that they didn't start out in, but that they're in because the business has grown, or because they just have to be in that role. And if they're in a role that they're not suited for, then why not find someone else who's more suited for it? If you got into a business because you're really good at something, and all of a sudden the word got out and you hired some good salespeople, and the business grew and grew and grew, and you're not able to do the thing that you really love to do, or whatever it is on the technical side, or maybe it's sales, and maybe the business acumen isn't your thing, like to run the business, make those decisions, then bring in someone from the outside to be your CEO. You have the option to do that, right? Or if you are a visionary and you're strategic and you find yourself in the day-to-day, that's not you. So match your love for what you're good at and what you love to do with what you do every day. And then anything that's not revenue generating, delegate it, right? Anything repeatable, anything that doesn't generate revenue for any reason or has nothing to do with your vision. And sometimes you got to do a time study. How do I spend my day, right? Who's on my team? Who can I rely on? And if my answer to that is not a lot of people, then it's time to clean house and find some good leaders so you can really scale your business, because that will definitely hold you back.
But if I take that last statement you made, I agree with everything you said before then, but that last statement's hard to
It
clean
is.
house, find
Yeah.
leaders.
Yep.
Um, do you find that that is a sticking point for business owners who ultimately they want to scale, or is like
Mm-hmm.
one of my friends say, I want to do it, right? I want to run a 10 miles, but they want
Yeah.
to scale. But whenever they look at the pain they're going to have to go through of,
Yeah.
I got to reposition my team and I've got to do some things differently, they find themselves going, oh, is that often the case?
Totally. And this has probably happened to you too, Justin, but I can't even tell you how many times, and I would have to say every time, I'm not exaggerating, but every time client of mine has let someone go that they hesitated to let go. Every time people would come to them and say, "Why did you wait so long?" And the attitude and the reduced toxicity and stress and whatever it is that that person brought to the table that wasn't good for the business was a relief to everybody around them. And sometimes it's more than one person. Sometimes it's not about letting them go. Sometimes it's like putting them in the right place. And sometimes we put people in places where we think they should be. Like, say, for instance, you have a really great salesperson and you decide to promote him to sales manager. That almost never works. They sell for a reason. Managers are managers, salespeople are salespeople. Sales managers don't sell usually because they're better at managing, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that a lot too.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Hmm.
I concur. Yes.
Hmm.
That's crazy. So, as a business coach, somebody's now been in this world for some time. I think I read a study one time says if you've been doing something for 10 years, you're a master at it. So, congratulations, you might be a master now as a business coach. But you and I are both a business is ever changing. No matter once we
All the
try to
time.
master something, it changes the
Yeah,
very next day because of whatever reason. As
yeah,
a
for
as a
sure.
coach, you have the opportunity to see so many strengths, weaknesses, things that work, things that don't work, and apply them into your clients' lives. What do you see perhaps as the strongest reason, the strongest benefit that a business owner could gain from a seasoned, well knowledge, experienced coach?
Boy, there's so many, but I think that having the outside perspective of someone that has the expertise just shortens the duration of time that it takes to get from here to there. Okay. And we'll never, right, be able to manufacture time. Once we have it and use it, it's gone, right? We can always earn more money. We can never get time back. And so if we have a plan and we're trying to execute a plan, having other people on the outside to help us make that happen, not only expeditiously, but also effectively and accurately, I think is worth every cent. I mean, the multiple of what the return is, I don't even know if you could calculate it. Okay. Because how do you calculate lost opportunity?
Yeah,
How do you even know? I mean, sometimes, if you lose a deal, you know what it could have been, revenue wise, but you don't always know what lost opportunity is, because if you're wasting your time trying to do something yourself or got other people doing it kind of, half baked, then what about all the opportunity that could have come along that didn't because you had your eye off the ball?
I think that's well said, Julie. I think it's well said, and it's very perceptive. In my own life with the coaches I've had, I have 6 coaches right now coaching me on various facets of my life,
My
from how to
goodness.
from how to eat right to how to exercise right to, because I love pizza. I love pizza, Julie. Love it.
It's so
And
good for you, Justin. It's so good for you.
yeah, yeah. So I've got people helping me. I've got people helping me set up proper funnels, help me learn how to build sales scripts because those are not my strengths, right? I am
Mm.
really good at scaling companies. But whenever I look at all the other things, it's like, my goodness, the details. And so I have to have people who can come in and speak to me. In your world as a coach, who do you find that you jive with the best? Who is your quote ideal client that you can look in, you can say, hey, Goodbread, that pizza. Don't eat that pizza, man. Who is your ideal client that you can just connect with? They listen to you and you are just energized from working with them.
I think it would be the client whose values align with my own.
Okay.
Yeah. And that maybe that sounds kind of fluffy, but honestly, I think it's the bedrock of any decision is really going to be tied to your core values, whether you've articulated them or not. And I think that the ones that I jive with the most and love spending time with the most are the ones who share, my philosophy and belief, in how to grow a business and how to grow a team and how to have a great life. I don't know, balance. I'm not really wild about the word balance because I think it's kind of a fallacy. But we know internally, right? If we have a good mix of everything. So those would be my favorites, regardless of industry, regardless of size, really. I don't work with real small businesses usually, but lower middle market primarily.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're near the end of the episode, and I want to talk about your book because I love your book. It was well written. But
Thank you.
before we jump on that, before you go to the book, you're talking about values. I have 12 values, and I'm actually turning into a new book. One day, Julie, I'm going to have a New York Times bestseller, right? And so
Fantastic. I
I've
know you will, no doubt.
I'm trying so hard. That's the one thing in my life that I set as a bar that's my big, hairy, audacious goal using Jim Collins' statement.
Love it.
It's
Love
like,
it.
so my 12 values, I like one of them is called turn the turtle. In other words, if you have the power within your ability to do something, do it. And I came from my dad and out in the woods one day, and he turned this little turtle over who was stuck on his back. And I said, Pops, why did you do that? He said, because I could. I said, no, no, no. Why'd you turn the turtle over? He said, because I could. I said, no, you're missing the point. Why'd you physically? He said, son, you're missing the point because I can. If I have something in my power to do something, I should do it, no matter how trivial, no matter how it impacts, no matter if anybody sees it. So that became one of my values from a walk in the woods
Mm,
with my dad, right? So you talk
awesome.
about values. What is one of your values that somebody would look and say, you know what, Julie, that resonates with me. Yeah, I could line up with that value.
Yeah. Never give up, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never give up has been a core value of mine for many years. And,
Wow.
there are times, let's face it, when you got to throw in the towel, but I'm never the first one to do that. So, another way to say it would be don't throw the fight.
Yep.
Yeah. So most of the time that's what people do. They give up before, the the pumping actually produces the water, right? I mean, it's
Yep.
the old, I don't know if
Zig
you know,
Ziglar.
I know I was going to just say, are you old enough to know who he
Oh
is?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Oh, prime the pump. Absolutely. And he had a huge impact on my life. So,
It's interesting. My mom's number one value is never give up. She actually has a picture of like this egret, like a bird that eats things with a
oh
long
yeah.
bill, and a
Uh-huh.
frog that's gripping this bird's throat, and he's like his body's inside the mouth, and it says "never give up." Yeah, this frog that's like choking this bird is just like getting swallowed, just like never give up. And
Hilarious.
I know exactly where it's in my mom's house. I can see it on the wall, and I'm
Yeah.
like, Mom, what is this? She goes, that's my motto: never give up in life. For the exact same reason you just articulated, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like the acres of diamond. Remember that old book, The Acres of Diamonds? You
Oh
just
yeah.
keep digging. It's there. Just got to give the time and the ability. So,
Mhm.
with your journey, you've written this amazing book. I want to talk a little bit about your book, what led you to write it, what's the thesis of it, and where can people find your book so they can might actually read it as well.
Well, thank you. It's on Amazon. It's called Poised for Exit. The subtitle is called A Woman Entrepreneur's Guide to Business Transition. And a lot of people say, well, why did you write the book for women? And I always say, well, I didn't write it just for women, but the subtitle is such that women entrepreneurs might be attracted to read it. Although most of the people who have read it, at least that I know, are men. And the process of exit planning is the same regardless. But because I went through my own exit, because I've gone through exits with several women entrepreneurs, over the years, there's just some nuances that are different between them. And I think it's important to understand what some of the differences are so that if we are going to advise them, that we can kind of know that and help them walk through it.
We'll put a link to the friends. We'll put a link to Julie's book on Amazon in the show notes. I challenge you to pick it up. It is a powerful read. You can learn more about Julie and her character. The reason why I enjoy speaking with her. I mean, it shines. I know you can hear it through her voice. As those of you who listen to us on the podcast, or those of you who watch us on YouTube, you can see the character of the person that I'm talking with. But Julie, I have this question I ask everybody. It's to me, it's a sombering question. I'll tell you the question. I'll tell you why it's sombering to me. The question is, if this was your last day on earth, and you were around the people that you care most about. Maybe that's your kids, your immediate family, and they're around you, and you could give them one piece of wisdom, one pearl of wisdom, one piece of advice. What would that be? That's my question. Now, the reason why I ask that is because to me, the saddest place that I've ever seen is a cemetery, not because there's people have gone, they're no longer with us. It's the fact that oftentimes they leave such a void in our world of education, of experiences, things of a lifetime that they didn't capture in writing, or perhaps they weren't able to articulate that. So I promised myself whenever my dad passed that I would always try to get that one pearl from everybody I talked to, because you've lived an amazing life and I can see it from every one of our interactions, the character of the person you are. So with that being said, what is that one pearl that you would tell those people you love the most?
Mm-hmm. Do what you're capable of. Yeah, do what you're capable of. And that's something that I have tried to instill in my kids. I have 4 children, and everyone's capable of doing, not everyone, but most people, let's just say, are capable of doing much more than they do. And I think that's why C is average. And most people deliver C work. And I think that, that's the problem that a lot of employers have with employees. They want to keep them, but they just can't get them to, you could do better, but it's also about their belief and self-worth too, right? So if we can foster that and help that, that would be mine.
Wow.
Do what you're capable of. Wow. There's so much joy in it. It isn't about how much you can acquire, right? It's the joy and the fulfillment and knowing that you've given it your best. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's powerful. I've been asked a lot as of late from people who truly know me. I call them closest acquaintances. They're not my top 3 or 4 friends, because they would never ask me this question, but they're like, Goodbread, you've gone through this exit, you've reached financial security, whatever that term means to whomever. Why do you keep going on? I mean, why not just quit? Why not just go, retire, take a life of leisure, go sit on the beach and play? And Julie, my answer is because I know what I'm capable of. I know that it's about looking at myself and my kids one day, and hopefully grandkids one day, and saying, hey, as my dad used to say, son, leave it on the field. Leave all your energy on the field. Do your very best, as unto the Lord, not unto men, out of the scriptures, but do your very best. And at the end of the day, you won't look back saying, what if? You look back and say, man, I gave it all on the field. So I personally resonate with that. That's right there in my ethos. That's one of my values, by the way.
Fantastic. I love it.
Julie.
That's why we get along so well, Justin.
That's awesome. Well, friends, I got to tell you, if you do not know Julie Keys, hopefully this was a little bit of insight into the person that I deeply respect, and a person that I follow, and a person that I allow to speak into my life. She has a powerful podcast. She's well written. She's well spoken. So I'm going to challenge you to take a look in the show notes. We're going to have a link in the show notes below, friends, so that you might know Julie as well. We'll have a link to her podcast. We'll have some links to her social media pages. And may I encourage you just to follow Julie, get to know her, and let her influence your life in a way that she's influenced hundreds, if not thousands of others. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Justin. This has been great. I greatly respect you as well. And I'm so happy that you're doing this work, because you're so suited for it. You're doing such a great thing, great impact.
You are too kind. You're too
awesome.
kind.
Awesome.
Well, friends, I know that life is hard, but life is good. Life is good. So my challenge to you, as always, is go out and make it a great day. It's not going to happen unless you make it. Till next time, friends.